UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military projects, false flag alien invasions, PSYOP, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join the discussion now on UAP Crossfire.
Well, good evening and welcome to UAP Crossfire on KGR Radio DB with my three other co-hosts. And in the background, Bill Skywatcher, Chris DiPerno up in New York, Decker, the Silverback out on the West Coast holding the fort down, and in the prairies, in the Midland, Dan the Padre Carlson out of South Dakota. I'm up in the New England territories. Obviously, I need to start right off with God's peace that surpasses all knowledge and understanding. We have a jam-packed show tonight, and I will not get to it at the end of the show. I can already tell that's going to happen. Just the warm-up for the show. We have a great guest tonight. Obviously, we need to pay homage to 9/11. As many of folks know, Chris was very close. I have a very, very close connection through my Mrs. Cobra. She was on duty and stationed in New York City at the time of the attack, and she was directly involved in the recovery efforts. So there is it changed everything in our lives. I think that we would probably, all of us tonight, would not be together if it wasn't for what occurred and all the things that happened since then. And, of course, we've had some terrible, terrible losses in the last 24 hours and the last 2 weeks. I can't let all those things go without taking a moment to recognize that and pray for our nation's people. And I think everybody that watches this show at least has some connection to that. And I'll leave it at that point. We do have some real fun tonight. Our guest comes from a really interesting news feature that I was excited that I had found and I used coming back. UAP News Center. Jeff Gould is the creator and the main editor and puts everything together. He was very kind on the email. He has us as part of the many podcasts that he features on this. It is a daily updated and upgraded site. It has great resources. It has great connections. And he's a very interesting man, and I'm really, really pleased that we were able to connect. It's wonderful when you go to a site and you put in the connect contact and you actually get somebody back and get things to work. So that's pretty good stuff. So quickly going around the horn, Chris, what do you have for us tonight? Anything special before we bring Jeff on?
No, I was looking at Jeff's site. I think there's a lot of great information that I'd like to talk to Jeff about. In the rock on Mars, NASA shows clear signs of life. Okay, I've heard that before. And key moments of the House UFO transparency. I don't know where that headline came from because I can't see anything that's been transparent with the U.S. government. I can't wait to see that video of the missile hitting that object. And we've discussed that one. That's going to be a great thing.
Yeah. Don't give any more away of the show there, Chris.
Well, then why'd you call me?
Padre, how are you tonight?
Just shut the hell up.
Padre, how are you tonight? Well, I'm sending a message in chat. I mean, you don't have to read that out loud either.
I'm functioning with the specified parameters, Commander Cobra. All the lights in the dash are green, and we're ready to go.
Well, as the official chaplain of KGRA and this show, get ready for confession. I think you might get one or two tonight in the chat room. And we're really pleased that the Silverback, Don Eckert, better known to me as Decker for years, is back with us. We missed him last week. We're glad that everything is still up on the West Coast. How are you tonight, sir?
Doing, I guess I'd have to say, Deuce, I'm fair to middling.
Fair to middling.
The last couple of days, as we all know, have been horrible. I told my beloved bride earlier, I said, God, I hope we have some laughs tonight because I need something to cheer me up a little bit. I've been looking forward to this show a great deal. I really have. And I may have a blinking red light on the dashboard, but I'm going to get the engine checked. It should be fine.
Excellent.
I haven't a clue what you just said.
Well,
he needs
Blinking light on the
lubrication.
dashboard, and you're going to check your oil. What? I mean, what? You can't.
Yeah.
why we talk about the show and the internal maintenance lights, let's bring our guest on, Mr. Jeff Gould. And why we're doing that, I'm going to give a quick readout. Jeff is a native of Michigan, and he is a Silicon Valley technology kind of guy who had a career, and upon retirement went back to a lifelong interest in UFOs and the phenomenon around it. And he has settled in Missouri, one of the greatest states, in my opinion. I really love that part of the world. I love Missouri. And there's some pretty interesting things we were talking about happening there. And it's obvious that he must have been a pretty good success because he's really has quite an interesting site, and he writes really well and he edits really well. And I'm really pleased that he's with us tonight. And I appreciate you taking the invite. I always tell people that are prospective, why don't you look at a couple shows? And a couple people don't answer. They don't come back. So you did, and here you are. And you said you were kind of looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Glad to be with you guys.
And I'm really happy to introduce your site to them. We have a great following on KGRA and all the various ways that the show is outletted. And as you met Bill Skywatcher, great producer who's holding this whole thing together for us.
Well, thanks for having me, gentlemen. I look forward to a great conversation today.
Well, how did you get started with this site? I mean, obviously, you retire, you have an interest. You're in Silicon Valley, so you're looking at this medium has exploded in every dimension. But I think it lacked the kind of, I would say impartial, but that's not the right word I want to use. It's just really straightforward presentation of a variety of viewpoints centered around this subject.
Yeah, the frustration for me that got me started on this was that I had a hard time personally finding the news about the UFO phenomenon. You go out there and you can search around on social media for a day and a half and find a lot of noise, but not a lot of news. And, you can have a hard time even finding some of the resources that you want, whether it's a book or a podcast or whatever. And so I just started sorting things out for myself, and I decided, you know what? Great place for this stuff would be to have a website. So I got into that, and it's been received very well. There's a lot of people, especially, inside the UFO community that like to look at it every day or several times a week to kind of get caught up on the news. And I like the impartiality of it in that I don't necessarily put my own opinions on things.
Right.
I find all the news and I link to it. And that's how you get some comments like we got about some of the silly things that are up there because, it may be silly, but maybe it came from CBS News or the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. And that means it has broad reach. And I want my audience to make their own judgment about the silly, but I also want them to know that kind of silliness is out there. So I try to find everything that there is out there, whether it's really important and serious, or whether it's widespread and misinformation. All of it is meaningful because we as a community have to deal with that, either the disinformation or the knowledge that we have. So I love getting all that stuff out there. I love making it available to people. I get consistently positive feedback on the site, and it's just a pleasure to be out there and doing that.
Have you had any, before I turn it over to my co-host, have you had any problems with the site? Where you've had, I would say, attacks or anything that shut it down? Because to me, the presentation is very proper. It's good. It's good media presentation. As you said, you're not putting much spin on it. Obviously, when we were doing some chatting, we had some similar takes and dissimilar takes on stuff on there, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. But Has the site done well? It seems that it's getting good population on it.
Yeah, I've got good visitorship, and it's pretty consistently growing. I'm getting a good and growing followership on social media, which kind of leads to the clicks over to the website, and so I'm seeing good response from that, and I think that people generally like kind of getting all the news in one place. That seems to be the big win, rather than the worst thing, if you want to ask me, is having to sort through like UFO Twitter, right, and trying to find what's going on. It's almost like the anti-UFO Twitter, right? You don't have to go coasting through 5,000 podcast episode promotions and 200 guys screaming about something that doesn't make any sense in order to find a little bit of real news, right? And so getting it all there and getting it in one place is what's been really well received.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to turn it over to the Padre. Padre, let's start us off tonight, please.
This site is by far the best UAP information site that I have ever seen. It's in my bookmarks. I look at it, and just the way it's laid out, the ease of the navigation and the variety that you have there. How long did it take you to develop this site?
Well, it's not the website so much as it is finding all that news every day. What you really need is a tool to go out there and search the internet, right, and find all that news out there so that you can kind of pick through and find the good stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So the trick was finding the right software that allows me to do a whole bunch of different searches, right? So you search on keywords, you search specific websites, you search specific websites with keywords, and you kind of get this big pile of stuff having to do with UFO stuff, and from there you sort it down. So the real work and the real trick isn't making a website. I'm from Silicon Valley, I can make a website, right? That's not a big deal. The real big deal is going out there and sorting through all the possible news and getting it down to just the UFO stuff, and then picking out the really meaningful UFO stuff. And on a day like today, shortly after we've had a congressional hearing, guess what? Every single outlet on the planet wrote something about that congressional hearing. I had 600 hits of news articles today, from the Hindustan Times to the CBS News to all the different outlets that you can possibly imagine around the world. And well, I don't know if you guys are real interested in the Hindustan Times, but so I sort some of that stuff out, right? Mm-hmm. And then I get down to the real stuff, and I get that up on the page, and that's how you get to where you're going. The other point I would make there is that I really try and show a conservative face to this. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to present the topic in a serious light, yep, in a fashion that is similar to other news websites like CBS News or like CNN or whatever website is out there that you would normally go and look for news at. So I try and keep that sort of straight face about me, and I try and link to a combination of things that are both represent names that the general public might connect with. That's how you get to things like, is CBS News going to say anything meaningful about the hearings? No. But is some of the general public going to recognize CBS News and say, oh, they're involved with this too? And this general public is part of my target audience, right? Certainly the UFO community, but I'm also trying to attract the general public. So seeing people out there recognizing some of those names, maybe it's the Wall Street Journal saying something bad about UFOs and denigrating us as a community, that's fine. That's news too. Everyone needs to know about that. But those brand names, they take advantage of their brand names. I'm going to take advantage of their brand names too. If they want to talk about our topic, I'm going to put it out there and let people know that I'm leveraging their credibility essentially because they decided to talk about the UFO phenomenon. So I get the big brand names out there. I try and keep a serious face, and I try and include the more realistic takes on things as well.
Has it evolved? I was going to say, would you agree with me on this, that the thing that you like about the site is probably what I like. It's not tabloid. It has a very serious feel to it, yep, but it's not off-putting. And that's, I think, the reason why I like it. I can see when something's updated, and it has, good sections in it, and then there's plenty of ways to link up the stuff. So go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's so intuitive, and you don't have all of these pop-ups getting in the way and flying in your face all the time. You just look at the site. right there you can say, okay, I'm interested in that and I'm interested in that. But I wanted to follow up, Jeff, with a question. I worked in TV news and weather for about 25 years, and we used to constantly get people wanting us to run their story. Do you have any kind of a place where people can send you news tips or press releases, or do you just look at what's already published?
I do. I mean, people know me, so I get a lot of stuff via social media. People will direct message me in social media, on Facebook, on X especially. I get things via email. I'm kind of known out there just a little bit, so the people that are making news, some of them will just let me know when something goes up. There's a writer on space.com who managed to find me, and every time he touches on the UAP topic, he makes sure that I know about it's there. It's that kind of thing, just have people get to know me and they send things in. It's like everything, you have to filter things. The conference people, I have a big conference page that lists all the UFO conferences and festivals and whatnot. And as near as I can tell, it's probably the most complete one on the internet. And the people that really know me in the conference world, they're all out there making sure that they're DMing me and getting their graphics to me and getting their conference up on my conference schedule. And that really it's about the second or third most popular page on the site is the conference schedule. People seem to really like to know what's going on in that respect.
What's your handle on X?
UAP News Center.
Okay.
Very tricky. He's a tricky man.
I'm clever that way.
Well, I'm just going to throw a quick one in before I talk to Decker. I think that the part about the conferences, if you've tracked any of the shows leading up to this one, to me is probably one of the most important grassroots part of this. Regional conferences, I think, are really critical because in areas, what we were talking about before we came to the show, the Ozarks have their own unique lore that goes with all of this. And I think you are in agreement that this is not just UAPs. There's an interconnectivity to all this paranormal activity in some way or form, and we're starting to figure that out more and more. We're starting to appreciate that more and more. And the regional conferences are a big part of how we're going to learn anything that's happening around this. I'm not waiting for the government to tell me what I know. I want to share the information with other people. Decker, great to see you tonight. Please jump in, sir.
Okay. First, Jeff, very warm welcome. Very happy to have you on the show. I told Commander Cobra that this was one I really looked forward to. Now, you made a couple of points that I'd like to hammer on a little bit. Back in the 80s, when my wife and I were publishing UFO magazine, she had come from a journalism background, and I came from a law enforcement background. So our main focus was getting as fine as we could the most factual information and what have you that we could find anywhere and publish it. And I think we succeeded because the magazine was extremely popular for many years. Now, one problem in the field, we had it then, and today we have it more than ever, are the fools in the field. People out there making crazy, wacky pronouncements, all types of things. And some of it, I think, is organic, but some of it, I suspect, because of my military background, has been planted. Now, for example, take this object, this interstellar object presently coursing its way through the solar system, 3I Atlas. Now, going back several years, and I'm sure you saw it, the History Channel had a series on called Unidentified. Some of the people on that are names today in the UFO field. Christopher Mellon, Luis Elizondo, Hal Puthoff, excuse me. And I'm trying to remember the fellow's name from Lockheed. It was Skinner, I believe. But at any rate, watching that and having the background that I had, I noticed one thing very, very interesting. Every episode ended on the possibility that this phenomena could, in fact, present a threat to national security. Now, suddenly, we have this thing coming through. The last few days in the morning, especially in the morning, when I first get up, I'll turn on either my cell phone or my laptop, and I'll start scanning stories. I have seen post after post claiming that this thing, in fact, is an extraterrestrial craft of some type, and it's on its way here to do God knows what. Now, I thought about that, and then I thought about, and I'm not saying that I know that it's not. I don't know what this thing is. And if the truth be told, I think very few people do know what this may be. But I think it's ripe for a giant disinformation program, dog and pony show, as orchestrated possibly from the Pentagon. What do you think about that?
This topic is so full of disinformation that I would be a fool to say that it isn't. Sometimes I feel like 80% of the information out there is disinformation or misinformation. And really the trick to the whole thing is tweezing apart the disinformation from the misinformation from real facts or real information that exists out there. So this topic, yeah, of course. But all the rest of the topics, yeah, all of them. On this particular item, you know, this Harvard professor Avi Loeb has been talking about this, and I actually read his material, and the closest thing he's come to saying like this is alien or something like that was one time he said, well, there's maybe a 40% chance that this is something that's, you know, not natural. And you should have seen the misinformation that blew up out of that single statement. You know, the next moment you saw articles about Harvard professor claims that there's alien ships approaching. You know, Harvard professor says it's not real. Now, a lot of that is in social media, and a lot of it is in the London tabloids. Those are main sources for that sort of silliness. But it's astonishing how one statement in an article that absolutely no one that's writing about it read just blows up into amazing amounts of disinformation on this topic and many others.
I couldn't agree more.
What do you think of him making that statement the way he did? I see him as a bit of a showman. I don't know him. I've never met him. I do read a lot of his stuff. I like some of his stuff, and I also get a little bit pissed off with some of his stuff, and quite frankly.
I have a theory about Professor Loeb and what he's doing. He has if you go back to his most recent book, was it Interstellar? Is that what it was called? I can't remember. I wrote a review on it. He said there, and he's been saying all along that that this is a possibility. His goal with the whole Galileo project is to find some space junk, essentially, right?
Right.
But I think he's doing something else with this. I think the old professor is being a professor here, and he's trying to educate the scientific community to be a little bit more adventuresome, a little bit more open to studying this sort of thing. He's had a very consistent complaint about, look, you fools, you are unwilling to look at stuff that's right in front of your faces and be excited about it and be interested in it and be curious about it. And I just wonder if he's not trying to role model interest and excitement in, things that could be different and things that are not just space rocks. So that's my suspicion about him, having read a couple of his books and having read dozens, if not 100, of his articles. At the same time, he does go out on a limb to the point where maybe a little bit more than I would suggest for an esteemed Harvard professor. He's stretching his credibility with some of these statements as well. So it's hard to know where he's at, but I see the idea about stretching his credibility, but I also see that he's a professor and he's constantly trying to teach.
Well, when I entered this field, the first thing I did, in 1966, Jeff, I had an astounding sighting with 3 other friends. We were deer hunting in my home state of Pennsylvania. This happened in December, not quite dusk, when we were overflown by 4 brilliant arc-like type objects. So I've got no doubt in my mind that there's something there. Now, what that something is, I don't know. But I've always liked Dr. Avi Loebe. The reason is, here's a man who was the Harvard Astronomer's Chair that was not afraid to peek outside the box. Now, back in 1991 or 2, while at UFO Magazine, one day I received a call on behalf of Professor Stanley McDaniel. I don't know if you know that name or not, from Richard Hoagland. And Hoagland, I knew Hoagland. He knew my background. And he said, we're writing a paper right now. The big thing at the time was NASA's purported refusal to put a camera on board their Mars observer, which was getting ready to fly back to Mars. And one of the things that was huge at that time was to rephotograph the Cydonia complex to find out once and for all if there really was a carved humanoid face on that plateau, okay? And NASA, up to that point, had been violently bucking against that. So Hoagland said, Don, he said, I understand that a academic paper was written on behalf of NASA, for NASA, back about 1961 or 62. We've searched everywhere for this thing, and we can't find it. Would you look into it? So he gave me the criteria. I started doing some investigation, research, and I found it. The Brookings Institute document. I got a copy of it, and I started reading through it. And I got to tell you, I was blown away by some of their conclusions. And I can still remember around page 215 or 216, somewhere right in there, the academics were talking about not if, but when we discover extraterrestrial artifacts or possibly even extraterrestrial life, what do we do? Remember, this is like 61, 62. Well, their recommendation was this. We think that if this information were to be released, there would be 2 groups of peoples that would be adversely affected. Number 1 would be engineers, academics, and so forth. They would be absolutely devastated by realizing everything they knew was, and I'm paraphrasing, basically obsolete. The other people that we think would be adversely affected would be religious individuals, fundamentalist religious individuals, because this would turn their parochial idea of a deity on its ear. Now, I never understood that personally. I always thought that the deity, God, if you will, if he was sharp enough to make this universe and sharp enough to put us here, why in the hell wouldn't he put life all throughout the universe? I never understood that, and why people would rail against that. But the bottom line is, from day one, Jeff, and I don't think you're going to disagree, there's always been a special push on behalf of the powers that be to keep this thing absolutely shut off and quiet. Your thoughts?
Absolutely, under wraps. I'll tell you another thing that I learned from Professor Avi Loeb in some of his writing that feeds right into that. So he wrote about a month ago on Medium.com about the James Webb and the Hubble telescope, and he told us something that I had never known about that before, and that is that the direct feed from Hubble, James Webb, Vera Rubin when it comes on board, all the big space telescopes, does not go directly to the scientists. This is Avi Loeb saying this now. It gets piped directly to the national security state.
Yep.
Because they need to mask any space-based assets that they have. They have spy satellites, they may have military stuff out there, but all that stuff has to get piped to them before the scientists see it. This is Avi Loeb explaining this to us in a written that's still published right now. All that stuff gets piped to them. They wipe out all the stuff that they don't want us to see, and then they pipe it back to the scientists.
Same thing happened,
What?
Jeff, with the Clementine operation back in '94. Okay? We put some of the finest satellite technology anywhere in the universe, as far as we're concerned, to completely re-photograph the moon. A friend of mine was the administrative assistant to the director, and all the telemetry, all the photography, everything that came back classified. Even the director of that project was not authorized to see what those photographs showed. So yeah, I have no doubt. Hey, look, the fix has been in since 1947, if you get right down to it.
Yeah, I mean, if they can erase out the space-based assets, what else are they erasing out of the picture, right?
Exactly.
Well, and it's also a very convenient thing that if you do have a larger cover-up, a larger situation beyond our own tactical, strategic security means, there's been plenty of activity that happened during the space shuttle years, conveniently hands in the International Space Station, just an astronaut's hand. Some of it may be more than protecting assets, and the other part, it feeds into it. But I sometimes think that it's done on purpose. Well, let's get to Chris, because Chris has been very patiently waiting. He's very interested, so jump in, sir.
I am very interested. Jeff, first I want to welcome you to the show. It's very refreshing. I just want to say one thing about Avi Loeb before we get in our discussion. Avi Loeb is a pretty smart guy, because he reminds me of that right stuff saying, no bucks Rogers. And he's looking for the bucks, because if he gets the bucks, he gets to do what he wants. And ufology has become more entertaining than ever before. I mean, you used to have very serious people, and then you had this way off stuff. And I love your website. I'm looking at it right now, the UAP News Center. I think that's great. I usually get my ufology information from the Mirror or the Star. And, the latest thing was that some housewife ran off with a reptilian because her husband was boring. But this I kind of get much better. And I just want to ask you this. How'd you get stuck with ufology? I mean, what brought you? You worked on scientific stuff, right, Jeff?
I was in management, mostly in the high-tech community. So I was running organizations and running teams.
I mean, did you have a sighting? Did you have an abduction? Did you have something that you kind of said, hey, I want to get into this?
Well, that's interesting, because I spent a long time convincing myself that I got into this because it's just interesting to me. But it dawns on me now that, my daughter years ago explained to me her experiences, of which she's had several. Ooh. And I think that went in here and subconsciously brought me into the phenomenon.
Can you talk about your daughter's experience?
I don't want to do too much without her permission. I haven't talked to her about it, but it had to do with orbs. There were a couple of orb incidences, but she's also seen the craft. Sorry, what?
Oh, I got to ask.
It's okay. It's okay. I'll talk to her maybe next time.
Okay. So that because of your daughter's experiences, you got into this field. Were you a skeptic at first?
Yes, I was. I'm a very
Yeah, me
skeptical
too.
person, and I demand that we do this logically, intelligently, and make our discoveries scientifically. But it is unavoidable that something is going on at the same time. So yeah, I started out as a skeptic. I read, I learned, and it's not. There's no proof. There's no proof like, oh, look, there's a UFO exhibit in the Smithsonian hanging from the ceiling. There's no, that film of one president saying, yes, there are UFOs. Here's a picture. None of that exists. But there is a weight of evidence. And you guys have been through this because you've been involved with the phenomenon for so long. And the weight of evidence is overwhelming. You just have to do the homework. The barrier is the homework, right? You have to do enough reading, enough studying, and enough understanding to see that there have been there's over 1 million newspaper articles going back to 1900 on this topic. There's thousands of bits of information on this topic.
Here's what gets
the weight of
me,
evidence.
An intelligent man like you starts out as a skeptic, reads about this, learns about it, and comes to the conclusion, hey, there's something out there, which we were just discussing. But after the Pentagon's hearing, the Jan Kololowski, he's the director of the All-Domain Anonymity Resolution Office, ARROW, reinforced the agency's stance that it has found no evidence of any craft reported were extraterrestrial. What kind of bull crap is that? When all kinds of people, I mean, how can you trust anything that comes out of the United States government's mouth when you have a hearing with Congresswoman Luna? You got these people telling you all this stuff. You're showing these videos, and then this guy comes out and goes, well, we don't have anything.
They should be the AADO, the All Anomaly Disinformation Office, if you ask me. I mean, that's what they're doing, right? They're flying cover for the DOD.
Well, I think the other part that, and I'm going to throw this out, this may be intentional, that I think that this phenomenon has been hijacked as a means to just use up bandwidth. And it happens in everything. There are sinister forces at work within the human family here that wants to maintain their position, their code, their control, and this is just one more to go along with popular music, film, books, the media, how we deliver it now. Yep. And because we're walking around with handheld devices and we're connected in a way, there are times that I think you could fly the proverbial football field-sized UFO right over in daylight, and most people wouldn't see it because they're looking down at their phone.
Yeah, but how could you take anything serious that the U.S. government is putting out?
I'm not arguing you, Chris. What I'm saying is I think that is done on purpose.
Oh, I'm sure.
Done as part of the dumbing down that goes on.
Yeah, but it gets to the point where people just don't give a damn anymore.
I got to pop in here, guys.
All right, pop in there, Decker.
Here we go.
The disclosure paper I wrote talks about a core secret that was discovered probably in 47 with the advent of whatever it was that happened at Roswell. And almost immediately, this was classified above top secret. Today, it is surrounded by a special access program, a SAP, which means nobody is never going to find nothing about what's behind this. And the people, not necessarily DOD, but the people, the powers that be, and it does not include the President of the United States, have decided that it would be so destabilizing if whatever that secret was happened to be revealed.
All right, then why have the hearing?
Irrecoverable damage.
Why have the hearing?
Bread and circus, my friend. Bread and circus.
Yeah, it's a circus. But don't you think by now people are? I mean, they must think the United States people are really dumb, and maybe they
Well, they do.
They do, Chris. I mean, I don't think you're throwing that out there just to be cute.
But
I think that is the opinion of most people that are in self-appointed positions above us.
Well, I could tell you that this dog and pony show that they're doing, I would rather read the Mirror and the Star and and stuff and get my UFO information from them than rather than the U.S. government, because it's all a dog and pony show. It's crap.
But Chris, that's because they've got the girly pictures and the margins on those sites.
Yeah,
That's
did you see some of them? Man, those girls from Mars are really great. I can tell you that right now, man. Holy crap.
We'll have
Look at the Cash and Landrum case.
We'll have the ecumenical intervention with Chris after the show, and Jeff has moved on to his back to his personal.
Look at the Cash Landrum case, okay, where a couple of women were overflown by some type of object, followed by a bunch of helicopters, military helicopters, and they were irradiated to the point, well, they got cancers and at least one of them died. Now, what the hell was that? They took it to court, okay? Of course, the courts ended up throwing the whole thing out. There was no way they could prove that this was a secret project. I think it was. I think it was a project with an experimental nuclear reactor. Something went wrong, and this is what happened. But this is just another little tidbit swept under the rug, okay? With everything else. Look, our species here in the United States has an attention span about the width of a gnat's ass, okay?
Oh, that's pretty good.
Today it's a news story. Tomorrow we're up and on to something else. In 3 days, you forget what the hell the news story was today. And that's the way it's been, especially with this field.
There was a study released this week that says the average attention span is 8 seconds. They measured it again. Sorry,
I just say, Padre?
8 seconds.
Well, that's about the width of a gnat's ass, Padre.
You know, the one thing I do like about the hearings is I actually had an opportunity to speak with Burleson, one of the congressmen. He's actually my congressman. And, you know, the sense I get from him is that he's, you know, they have a responsibility to take a look at the books and understand where the money is being spent. And I don't think any of this nonsense gets us to disclosure. I don't think those hearings get us to disclosure. It might move the needle on kind of like, you know, bringing the UFO phenomenon into the Overton window or something. But I don't think you get disclosure because they aren't authorized to talk about this stuff. Yeah. What they're authorized to do is to get to the books and make sure the money's not being misappropriated. Yeah, and I do believe that that's what they're trying to do in Congress. I believe that they're trying to get to an understanding of how the money is being spent. And I bless them for that. I love them for doing that. I just don't think it's getting us to disclosure.
It's great with the kind of deficit we're running. It's a good time to start thinking about getting to the books.
The DOD, you know, whatever. How much are they spending? $12 a year.
We're you know, black programs that are using names that actually attract UFO attention. They are going to programs that people can't ever identify.
Right.
There's much to happen there. Before I jump in, I'm going to ask Bill. Bill, bring up the film with the testimony and the pictures of the triangle-shaped airplanes.
Without objection, so ordered. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Also, as my friend Mr. Moskowitz might have to go, would you like to go now? Okay. All right. Mr. Borland, in your testimony, you described witnessing large triangular craft while stationed at Langley Air Force Base in 2012. Can you explain what you observed in terms of size, behavior, and why you're confident it was not conventional technology?
Great question, ma'am. So on the base, I lived in the barracks. There was a little smoke pit outside. I was there on the telephone and looking across to the flight line, and I see a white light pop up and stop about 100 feet in the air. I thought it was a weather balloon. I've seen tests from there before, weeknight, you know, normal thing, not surprising. I actually finished my cigarette and I began walking up towards the flight line. There is a track, and because I was on 3 months of night work, I would walk the track at night when we were weather down. And as I began walking towards the light, towards the flight line and the track, the light then flies across the base, across the flight line, and as it flies to me, a triangle manifests around the light. I can't tell you if it's active camouflage. I can't tell you if it appeared around the light, but I can tell you that it was a white light and then it was a triangle. It stopped about 100 feet in front of me and approximately 100 feet above me. My telephone got extremely hot, completely froze, dead. I remember how thick it was. It was between 1 to 2 stories thick, equilateral triangle. I could never see the top of it, and the edges were 90 degrees. There were 4 lights in total, 1 light on each corner, and a larger light in the center, 2 to 3 times the size of the corner lights. But what was really odd was the outside. The best way to describe it is like looking at a James Webb telescope picture where you have the colors and then the black background. So the craft itself was this black metallic flake paint, but on top of the craft was this gold, lava, plasma, some type of fluid going over and around the craft. I'm under this for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then the center light flashes 2 to 3 times, no sound, immediately shoots up to commercial jet level minimum, in my opinion, and I immediately feel static electricity all over my body, and then I smell the smell of after a thunderstorm or lightning storm, that really strong summer thunderstorm smell. Gets up to flight level. I'm trying to get my phone reset, and I can only see the center light at this point. If I didn't actually see it take off, I would have thought it was a star. And then it hovers up there, and it begins to slowly move due east out over the Atlantic Ocean. I finally got my phone reset. The entire thing was about, from the time I saw the light pop up near the hangar until it took off out over the ocean, was about 15 minutes.
And following up to that question, after you disclose this information to the intelligence community, Inspector General, you're subject to phishing attempts and job blacklisting. How widespread do you think this is across the intelligence community for those who raise concerns regarding UAP programs?
It's a difficult question to answer. I think prior to David Grush and people beginning this process of bringing people into awareness of the reality of these programs and certain things people have witnessed, probably extremely widespread. I think today there's still an issue, but because people are able to come before you and people are speaking out, I think it has been somewhat less. I would hope, though, that people would, because if this goes back into closed doors, this is going to get really ugly.
What type of behavior have you witnessed from former Aero Director Sean Kilpatrick as well as his staff in relate to this information you provided to them? Did they ever try to classify this information as non-human technology?
Good question. The problem with this is that I know what I experienced firsthand, and I know other things. I think the staff at Aero that I met with in March of 2023, I think they were good people doing the job they were told to do. I did not meet with Kirkpatrick. He was either not present or did not want to meet me that day. However, they did classify information about the reality of this subject, and it was very concerning because in my Aero MFR, they had actually referenced a former staff member that was the one who told me to go there, and they probably shouldn't have done that.
And real quick before my time is up, and we might go to second round of questioning just so you're all aware, how important, given everything that you've seen and experienced, is the UAP Disclosure Act of 2025 in restoring both public accountability and trust?
I think very important. I would hope, though, that the 7-year window could be shrunk, my opinion, but very important. The truth needs to be known.
So, gentlemen, that description that Mr. Boland gave matches countless ones. Jeff, you may or may not be aware, but I have an absolute obsession with the triangle aircraft thing. I've been involved in tracking it for years. The description, I'm not doubting anything that he said and what he experienced. I think there's a lot of interesting facts to unpack there, but we have about 6 minutes or 7 minutes before we're really bumping up against the break. I want to go around. I'll start with you, Jeff, and then I'll jump to the Padre. What do you think of this testimony?
I think he's a sincere guy. Can I tell you whether it was man-made or whether it's non-human? There's just no way of knowing. Right. I mean, I defer to you, Cobra. What's your opinion on
to me, I don't know what the source of the engineering is, but this was very much a man-created, man-functioning vehicle going on. Just for the fact that this happens at Langley, if everything is true, and I'm going to take it at face value that it's true what he saw, what he experienced, how it behaved, fits countless ones. But there's also a problem that he doesn't say anything that is not already been talked about or witnessed and put into popular. There's no big reveal there. There's some interesting additional facts about the interaction that he felt on his skin, the stuff that happened with his phone. It's obvious that he doesn't have a lot of sound because he never talks about any sound, which is a little different from other ones that I've had. Padre?
Yeah, I was impressed by the smells that he reported having, and that's something that you generally don't hear about in somebody who's lying. That level of detail. I think that he is sincere about what he saw. I think that he is genuinely perplexed. And Commander, I got to go with you. I think that most of the triangle stuff we're seeing is ours in some way or another, some kind of advanced tech that we have. If you go back and you look all the way back to Operation Paperclip and some of the stuff that we got from Nazi Germany, they were working on a Delta aircraft at the time of their surrender. So I know that we had access to those things, and I think we've been trying to modify them with a new kind of propulsion system that somehow creates that. I mean, that smell you generally smell after like a lightning strike, that's ozone. So you look at, okay, what is going on there? What is this electromagnetic aspect of this propulsion, and how is it related to anti-gravitic? But I'm with you. I think it's ours.
Chris?
I take a different view. I personally think that this guy is, I read an article on him, how he's faced retaliation, medical malpractice, and workplace harassment, and all this other gobbledygook that happened to him. I think he saw a special access program project. He was told to keep your mouth shut. He didn't want to keep his mouth shut, and probably somebody higher said, keep your frickin' mouth shut, and, one thing led to another. But, what has he told us that we don't already know? All right, we've got all kinds of people who've seen triangles, and nobody's ever said that they're extraterrestrial or ours because we don't know. It's a special access process, just like Decker said. That stuff is kept well under wraps. And so it could be ours being tested out there. And he was just, at the right place, the right time to see it. And there you go. And for him to be a whistleblower's got to be somebody who says, I was in the craft. I saw the dead bodies. I worked on this, like Bob Lazar. And a lot of people say, well, Bob Lazar was bull. But Bob Lazar's stuff that he's saying 20 years ago is now coming true.
Decker, we're down to our last few minutes before the break. Take us to the break. What do you think?
Okay. I'll tell you very, very quickly. This guy is certainly not the first. I'm sure he won't be the last. But once again, I must reiterate that it's my opinion that, first off, we all know Arrow. Crap from the top to the bottom. Kirkpatrick, okay, nothing there, nothing to see. And this guy was on a mission, and he carried his mission out well. We know that there were a lot of people that went there with important information, purportedly, and he didn't even want to talk to them, okay? Later, in some cases, they claimed they did talk to them, but the witnesses said, no, we were never called in to talk. So anything that comes out of that guy's mouth, I don't believe, all right? And I got to go back to when I was a cop. If I had a confidential informant, that guy had to be 100% on top all the time, every day, 365. And one time that I caught them intentionally deceiving me, hey, we're done from that point forward. So, this guy struck me as sincere. I think Chris had a couple of stellar points there, okay? Very likely he might have stumbled into something. That makes sense to me. and he was told to shut his hole. He chose not to shut his hole. And then retaliation. Well, guys, Chris, Cobra, we've all been in the military. We know how that works, okay? If you have a field grade officer coming in telling you to shut your mouth, then by God, you shut your mouth. If you don't, hey, you get what you have coming. So yeah, I think this is very possible. The triangle thing, I'm not sure about. Honestly, it's hard for me to conceptualize a ball of light turning into this huge building-sized triangle. Now, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I would never do that. But on the other hand, I'm trying to think of how it could possibly happen. So the bottom line is, I think this guy was telling what he believed to be the absolute truth. Now, that doesn't mean it was the truth. And the Bob Lazar being mentioned, I know Lazar, known Lazar since the beginning. I've been to his house. I talked to him. I interviewed him. And I always came away with Lazar in my gray basket. Not that he was lying. I never detected that in any way, shape, or form. But I also considered that maybe at some point somebody took his mind out, washed it, and put it back, if you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
There's
Let me
always
jump in
been
real
that
quick.
possible.
I just want to jump in real quick as we go to the break, just to the last minute. To me, it's pretty obvious that if you have a bright light on a dark night, you're not going to see the rest of the crap. We do it all the time in conventional airplanes that I fly right now. And then when it gets over the top, then you can start to see the outline. So that doesn't surprise me. The technology seems to be pretty evident as well. The number one thing I have a problem is this happened at Langley. Langley's a very busy base. Why would you be flying this kind of technology in a way, if it's secret, if it's covered, that you would allow anybody to see it? Why wouldn't you have the diversion? Obviously, you can't turn the lights off on this. I think the lights are part of the power source of that what we're seeing happen here. So something extraordinary happened.
Can I answer that after the
all kinds of stuff. We're at the break.
Yeah.
UAP Crossfire. Our guest is Jeff Gould from UAP News Center. And we are going to open up with missiles and orbs and drones on the return. See you on the flip side. Well, we're waiting for Jeff to reconnect, and we're going to jump into the video on the Hellfire missile being shot. It's pretty interesting. Again, I always tell folks when I talk about stuff, everything I'm talking about is open source. I never mention anything classified, and if I did, if I was exposed to anything classified, I would not bring it up on the show. That has long-term effects on my life that I would never want to deal with. So everything I will be talking about when we get into this will be open source material, and but it has been a pretty big topic that's come up. Our guest tonight, Jeff Gould, is the man behind UAP News Center, UAPnewscenter.com. We are now featured on the site. It is a place that I go to frequently. And I wanted to throw this out to you earlier, Jeff. It's interesting. A lot of times when I'm on base using my government computer, I'm allowed to, look at news sites, but there's certain news sites that are blocked.
Well, there are people that probably want to see what you're looking at too.
Thank you for the heads up there, Don. I never thought that maybe I'm being monitored, but there's sites that are blocked that I can't get to, that the government screen will not allow it to go through. Can't reach that place. Yours is allowed. So I'm not sure if you're happy or if you're sad about that.
I don't know if I should worry about that or feel good about it. I don't know what to make of it.
Well, after this show, if you see guys in the dark suits and cars that look like porcupines, you may want to just write me a snail mail. Don't call me. Okay, just drop me a.
Yeah, I think I hear a helicopter right now.
So with that said, we're gonna jump into this one, and then there's a couple of things. The other thing I want to bring out to the audience is on our commercials. The station has really gone big into putting some pretty interesting products there to support the station. And I ask that you consider that, especially as we are moving forward, the big holiday seasons that are coming up, those kinds of things. Grab and share a little bit and help keep the lights on, because what you see here, what you see at like other stations, what you see happening with Jeff's site, you run on your clicks, you run on who's there, and you run on where the support's coming from. And Chris is a little upset because he didn't get his check. It wasn't direct deposit. We're going to have to one him up, so we want to keep that in mind. Keep the shop in mind. It's an important part of it, and it's how this is being done. And I'm very sad to say that a number of stations, one of the reasons I'm really excited about Jeff's site is because it's a great site, but a lot of stations have contracted. They just could not make it work in this, and they've been crowded out. And what they're crowded out with is crap. I mean, there's no nice way to put that. And I don't think that that's by accident. To me, that seems to be part of it. If you're into this, if you're into freedom of speech, if you're into not having it censored, you gotta support it. And I appreciate it. And as I call them, the greatest audience on the planet, my eternal thanks to them. With that said, let's run the video, please, of the Hellfire missile hitting the orb as it was first put out. Please.
I want to cue up a video that I've been given. And as before it starts, I'm going to describe. This was taken October 30th of 2024. This video is of an MQ-9 drone tracking an orb, or this object, off the coast of Yemen. You'll see that another MQ-9 launched a Hellfire missile. You cannot see that drone. And so I'm not going to explain it to you. You'll see exactly what it does. This is when it zoomed out, so you can still see it traveling. So, Mr. Knapp, do you have you heard about events like this occurring, and what information might you have?
Okay, so I'm going to start with our guest, since he's our guest. Your reaction and your thoughts with that.
My thoughts are that I'm really tired of fuzzy video from the DoD. Give us something clear, for gosh sakes.
Here.
You know darn well they have 4K footage of that and every other thing they've ever shown us. And what we get every single time is fuzzy gray footage. It's very difficult to interpret anything like that. And I hope they're not intentionally misleading our Congress people with stuff like that.
Well, I'm not going to react yet. That's an excellent point. Decker, what about you, please? Your first shot on this. Just give me a short.
Somebody sent me this video, and they told me when you watch it, you can tell it's been shot with a potato camera. And I saw it, and I believe that. Now, I got to tell you a couple of things very quickly. Number one, I'm totally skeptical about this, all right? I don't know any of the provenance. I don't know what the alleged MPH this thing was traveling. My experience with Hellfire missiles goes back to Vietnam. At the beginning of the Easter offensive, the U.S. military deployed the first helicopters with wire-guided missiles, the Hellfires.
No, I'm sorry, Don. I got to correct you. They were not Hellfires. You were seeing TOW missiles. The Hellfires were not in Vietnam. I'm going to have to stop you on that one.
All right. Okay. Well, I stand corrected. But they were damn big missiles that blew up tanks.
Right.
Okay. Which is what the Hellfire is supposed to do. I never heard of a Hellfire being fired air to air at an object. I wouldn't even know how that worked. But
drones.
With that being said, I didn't see any explosion upon impact.
Correct.
Was that a Ginsu knife special?
Nope. I'll give you. I'm going to give you my take on this at the end. But
okay,
it's a very valid point.
Okay, and I just got to say, I'm to the point where, very honestly, I believe very little I see coming purportedly from government sources. That's just the way it is.
Padre, how about yourself?
I found this very interesting for a number of reasons. First of all, as the Silverback alluded to, this is the first time I've heard of the Hellfire being used in an air-to-air capacity. The second thing, concerning the absence of an explosion. I don't know how the fusing works on a Hellfire. And if you notice, if you would look at that tape again, the last split second before impact, the missile does a slight course correction.
Correct.
It looks as though it was about to hit it smack dab, but instead it hit the rear of the object. And then it seems like there are three objects that fall out the back end of the larger orb. Why were we not shown more about what happened after the impact?
Good point.
What became of those three objects that
They fell in the
out?
water.
They went in the water. Okay. So,
No doubt about it.
okay, good. I just wanted to raise that.
I think it's a really good point. And you guys, I'm going to give you plenty. I'm going to be the goldfish, and I'm going to let you guys shark attack me after I give you what I think is the most coherent explanation. And I'm going to ribbon it as quick as I can. But I want to get Chris. Chris, your takes.
Okay, well, the AGM 114 Hellfire.
Chris, don't read about the missile. I fired them. I don't want to hear. I don't want you read me. I want you to give me your impressions of what you saw.
I'm just telling you what my impression is. But I want to call it the right thing. I don't want you coming in saying, "Well, you're wrong. It's a toe or it's this or that." So I'm just trying to do it the right way. Anyway,
Oh, buddy, you're standing up for me. Thanks.
Stop the bromance. Stop the bromance.
I was, Don. But anyways, the Hellfire was designed as a tank killer, but they used it for drones. That was the first thing that I thought about, is that a Hellfire was being shot at by a drone. Now, remember when we were taking down the balloon, remember the Chinese balloon that had a great flight across our nation? We didn't arm that missile. The missile was designed, I guess, or not loaded to blast it out of the air. It just, take it down so we could collect it. Well, my theory is the same thing, is that, hey, they didn't arm the Hellfire. They want to hit it, maybe knock it out of the air, and so they can collect it and use it. I think it was a drone. I mean, the way it acted. Look, one thing. If it was a UFO, that missile would never hit it. Those guys would have just gone whoop, 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 and gone. That's number one. Number two, why were they shooting at it anyways? I mean, why would you want to shoot it at a UFO? That's two. So they must have thought, hey, this is a drone. This is my opinion, my humble opinion. This is a drone. Let's knock it out of the air. Let's see whose it is. Let's collect some intelligence.
Okay, very good, gentlemen. So I'm going to try to give you as quick a ribbon synopsis of what I think has happened here. And I'm going to tell you this is pretty well informed. Again, all open sources. If I get something wrong, I look forward. Everyone that follows me on this will jump on it and send me the emails, and I'll try to answer them personally. Number one, the big clue on this, and going back to what Jeff said, I can't tell if this rep is being played or if he's playing us. That's number one. Because before this came out, there was a classified brief to explain what happened here. And if he didn't get that, or if he didn't know how to get that, shame on the rep. So that's number one. Number two, the absolute clue here is the word Yemen, where the Houthis are firing all kinds of activities against ships. We almost lost two F-35s. We lost two F-35s in an indirect way because of the Houthis and what they're doing with quote-unquote drones. So that's a key part. He also said Predator, MQ-9. One of these vehicles is called a Reaper, and the other one is called a Predator. And what happened here is something that was very similar that happened during Desert Storm. Once Desert Shield ended and Desert Storm and the 117, and some night we'll go through the whole thing about the opening scene of the 117 going in and going downtown on Baghdad, was accomplished by Army and Air Force helicopters that flew up and took out radar sites. Even though the 117 couldn't be seen, they didn't know it. And they opened up a hole in that defensive line in Iraq, and the 117s went through, and once they realized they could not be seen and they were completely wiping out and taking everything out, everything that was in some state of operational or development test was packed up and sent to Saudi Arabia or other countries around there, and it was flying during Desert Storm. They were going out and they were trying real world strategic and tactical operational use. That's what happened here tonight. One of those aircraft, most likely the Predator, was shooting a laser on some kind of drone, and that laser was reflecting off of it, and they shot a Hellfire. The Hellfire was designed to take out ground targets almost for sure in this. There is an air-to-air capacity. It's a little tricky how you do it. You have to have a certain amount of velocity. A Pred or a Reaper does not generate enough forward. They fly at speeds that I fly at. So to actually get that to work, you need to have two things happening. Maybe put the aircraft into a dive to get a little more speed out of it. And your target has to be traveling at a certain speed, and it has to be in a flight path that you can get the intercept to work. And there's a magic number of speed. To kind of answer you, Don, it's right around 270 knots to about 250 knots. So it's about 240, 270 miles per hour, someplace in that realm of what you need for overtake to work. And I'm sure that that's probably changed. And there's different motors and different configurations. So I don't think we had a warhead that was going to react. We had a seeker head on there that's looking for the laser reflection to lock onto. There's no active radar in the Hellfire missile. So that's what it's going for. And that's why you see that wiggle at the end that the Padre's talking about, because as it's turning, not that it knows it's going to get hit, it is turning and it reflected, and whatever reflected off of it was enough to cause it to get a better lock, and it's doing that. The Hellfire was designed, as Don was saying, to actually hit the top of the tank. So when it was fired from a helicopter, it would go down, it would swoop. But when it got to the target, either you would program in or you would laze it. It would pop up in the air and then come down on the top of the cupola. And they had to change that for the other applications. We don't do that now. I'm pretty sure it was a Hellfire that took the boat out in the Caribbean. I'm pretty sure that is what hit that as well. Obviously, that fusing worked pretty well if you had seen that video, how that went. But much bigger mass, and when it made contact with a larger mass, and it was a much more of a head-on hit if you watch the video there. So why did they do this? I think this was some operational testing. I think this was, can we do this? It may have been something as simple as giving qualification to people that are operating those aircraft, and we do that all the time. And we're not the only country in the world that does that. The Russians just did it the other night when they did a penetration into Poland with their drones. And I think that they were testing how well the F-35 and how well the F-16 worked. And if you watch that one, there was one that went extremely deep into Poland, or there are people operating within the borders of Poland. And all of this, I think, is partially for a show of force. It goes back to my Tic Tac explanation that sometimes when these things are revealed, it's so that folks like Jeff pick it up and put it on there, that the mainstream media gets in there and puts it in there, because we're trying to signal to adversaries a capability, or maybe feign a capability, or force them to go into a different direction or react a certain way. Pretty sure that's what we saw here. And I don't think it cloaked. I don't think it did anything. I think it was a ballistic hit. I think it hit the back end of it. And it's very interesting. It's not unusual that the perspective that you were seeing, I'm almost positive, is the vehicle that was lasing it. And once it wasn't flying the way it was, either the algorithm that was used to track or the person that was the sensor operator that was hand flying it couldn't keep it on there very well because it's not flying in a normal trajectory. And it looked to me that it went right into the water. And it didn't have much of an explosion. You lose that, it's very hard to find. Even the splash is not going to show up. And they weren't operating, and Don was absolutely correct, with the dog poopy kind of potato camera, I believe is what he called it, kind of thing that's going on there, purposely dumbed down. I think this is probably once or twice removed from the actual, because there's no targeting that's being shown there. There's no overlays to show you speeds, altitudes, vectors, position of the aircraft that's doing the lays. None of that stuff's going on there. The other thing that's interesting, many Hellfires do provide a picture to the operator so they can see it. That capability does exist. That's the way the tow worked that Don was talking about in the beginning. That's how they actually flew it. The difference with the tow was it actually had a wire. And the wire is how you put the inputs, and you use the camera to fly it to your target. There's a discussion that when the Israelis in one of the wars and with one of the Arabs, they shot so many tows, they had to go out and pull the wires that they were using off everything because they were just covered like spider webs all over this part of the battlefield. They had to pull it down because they couldn't operate. So I think that's what happened. I think it's an interesting thing. And I think what Jeff brought out in the beginning, why show this and why not? Why could not a rep, a member of Congress, get a full explanation? Did they get the full explanation and still decide they're going to go with this and try to make this seem more mysterious than it was? So I'll go back to you, Decker. I'll start with you and I'll work backwards. What do you think? On my take.
I really can't argue with anything. I'm still extremely skeptical about this. Once again, let's fall back to my overall belief. This was another part of the dog and the pony show. Okay, let's face it. Right now in the United States, how many men and women at one point or another actually served in the armed forces? We're talking about huge swaths of the population are civilians who have no more idea about what the hell the military does than a fly on the rear of the moon. Okay, so yeah, I think this is just card tricks and watch the juggler. I think that's all it is.
Chris, what do you think of my explanation?
I think your explanation was really spot on. The one thing I would say is that these people in Congress, how come nobody called out the video like Don did? That's the first thing all of us said. What a crappy video this is. And nobody in Congress said, hey, what's up? We don't have better technology than this to show this crap, to get a better picture, which Jeff said, hey, this could have been in 4K, could have been much better. You said that the ability of the Hellfires to have pictures or everything taken. So, they don't want us to see what the real deal is.
Padre?
Well, if it's a laser targeting thing, most UAPs react negatively to being painted with a laser. I mean, remember when that New Jersey flap was going on, people were shining lasers at them and they behaved differently. Also, Commander, Hellfire is what, 5.5 feet long, something like that? And
depending on the version and how big of a motor on it, it's in that neighborhood.
As far as missiles go, it's not a big one. And you look at the size of the Hellfire compared to the object. This was a really small object. Certainly not big enough to have any occupant or anything in it.
Oh, no. This was a Houthi drone of some kind that was out there flying.
Yeah.
The way that it's being distorted makes me think that there may have been some post-production work that went on there, just like when you look at Tic Tac and, we're looking at it and it's changing shape and the light's changing, and that's not accurate. Or there's qualities going on. The Tic Tac to me seems to be something different because it's not flying bending air. It's not using thrust. It's not using prop rotors or rotor blades. This is using some kind of wing or a rotary wing capability. And these guys, the Houthis, have proven that they're pretty capable of causing a lot of trouble for not a lot of money for us and everybody else. So again, I think that this was kind of a hunting, training, prove it can be done kind of expedition that was going on because they had good conditions to do this. They didn't have anybody. Maybe it was threatening something and this is what motivated it, or this was just a good opportunity to jump this thing, nail it, and see if you can do it. And do it in such a way. I have seen, if you guys have probably heard very recently, that the F-15, the latest version of the Strike Eagle, has had unbelievable success, especially during the Houthi last big engagement and even with Iran, where they were firing and knocking down drones with laser-guided rockets that have a seeker head in them, because rockets tend to be like big bullets. Most times they don't do that. Now you can put a GPS position in them, or you can put a seeker head and the rocket actually has fins that turn. It's like a missile. There's a technical difference why they call it a rocket versus a missile. And it's usually who's building it and how much they're paying for it. But these jets are flying with these, and the backseater is working, 3 times as hard as the pilot in the front seat to get the laser on it, fire it, shoot, and go to the next one, and go to the next one. It's like a video game while you're getting thrown around at a couple G's as you're flipping around to do this, because you're being swarmed. And they had an unbelievable. In fact, there's a very big award ceremony coming up pretty soon for a number, probably about 5 or 6 crews that saved the day in a major way and made this technology go very quickly and happen. And you probably heard the part where the Marines, when they're flying their F-35, they were thumping a lot of these drones, where they put such air disturbance by flying the jet very close to it, caused them to tip over or lose control because they couldn't react to it. Jeff, I'll leave it to you. What do you think of my explanation on that?
I like your explanation, but it leaves me with a question. Does the Congress know about what you just said and are misleading us, or is the Congress being misled?
So I'm not going to answer that directly. I'm going to take the world view. Notice my hands. World view. Happy hands. I'm going to take the world view. Either no one asks the questions and you have a really bad staff, and that happens, and they're looking for something. They're looking for airtime. They're looking for FaceTime. They're looking for market share, whatever it is, and you go out there and do that. That would not be the first time since the founding of this great nation that somebody's gone up in the halls of Congress, either side, the lower house or the upper house, and talked out their ass, to use the pretty straight up line. That could be it. This person or persons could be being set up. They could be purposely doing it. Or it could be part of a much larger part of the program. It feeds the insatiable appetite for this whole situation that's going on with UAPs. It gets the word out to a number of our adversaries that we're able to do this kind of work now with our unmanned aircraft. We've seen what's happened with our manned aircraft. So it's a way of rattling the saber and not actually drawing it out and doing that. And we've been doing that forever. Like when Chris was talking about to knock that missile down, they didn't knock the missile down with not arming the head because they wanted to recover it. If they wanted to recover it, they would have brought that down over land. No one wanted to find out that our technology was on a Chinese balloon that had flown over the United States that they bought on the open market and they were using. No one wanted that to come up. They were hoping when that hit the water and it sunk, they weren't going to recover anything. They just recovered a lot of it, and that's how we know that. They had to use a radar missile, and they had to paint that radar onto a very, very difficult target to get radar reflection. And once it got close, it didn't take much to pierce the balloon, especially at that high altitude it was at, because it expands and it's gone to its maximum. Someone in the chat asked, do we ever use balloons as target? Yeah, we do. We use them for radar. You can suspend stuff underneath them that you can practice with that. There's a lot of reasons that you can use balloons, and they're, as the Chinese have used them, we did in the past, they're great surveillance as long as you can get some information that you can actually retrieve the information. So to answer your question, Jeff, there's a lot of really uncomfortable discussions to have here. Did somebody get used? Did somebody get played? Did somebody play? But I have to say this, if you ask me to stand up in front of a group of people and present this, and you want me not to tell the truth or you want me to tell a version, you better have told me behind closed doors why we're doing this. I'm going to give you a quick example. When we were building terrain following radar in this country, this was at the height of the Cold War, and we were convinced, before we really got into the stealth, the only way we were going to be able to deliver, because of the way the Soviet Union, then Soviet Union, had built radars and then integrated missiles and radar guided munitions, guns that were going to shoot in the air, we had to go very, very fast, very, very low. And it became problematic that pilots alone could do that. You needed to have queuing and you need to have radars, and we came up terrain following radar that really the aircraft and autopilot was flying it. When they were in the early parts of doing this, and we had some horrendous losses of test crews. One of the first things they found out when they were flying the Rocky Mountains was the radar worked great, and it was working well going over the Rockies. And they were with below 200 feet, and they were at near Mach speeds. They were nearly breaking the sound barrier. But when they came over one ridge line, the radar didn't see the water. It saw the bottom of the lake, and they flew right into the water and lost the crew because it read the bottom of the lake, and they had to go back and figure out, well, what happened here? So they had to change the wavelength of the radar, and they had to change how it, because remember, everything was analog in my day leading up to probably right around the 90s when it really became usable that you could go digital. God, we didn't go GPS until late 90s that we were relying on GPS. So when they had some major breakthroughs, they told test crews to go out and talk about, they blew the test. And the reason that they were saying publicly they blew the test and everybody's yelling military's wasting money and, you know, $800 toilet seats and $1,000 hammers and all that stuff going on is because we wanted the Soviets not to know that we were that far ahead in the technology and it was working. And we wanted them to say, okay, we got to make a choice. Do we try to continue to do what they're doing? Do we try to use field agents to try to get that information of how they're producing it? Or do we spend our time and money someplace else? And they took the bait. They spent it someplace time and else. They didn't, and we had a 3 or 4 year lead on it. Now, unfortunately, what happens and what's happened right now at the PRC, we make a breakthrough and somebody who doesn't quite understand how this works is more than happy to sell it out. And they'll sell it out. And that's why all of a sudden when you see an F-35, you have a PRC airplane that looks a lot like an F-35 that comes out pretty quick right afterwards. Different story, different night. But to answer you, circle back there, Jeff, unfortunately, it was either by omission or by commission on that kind of stuff. And everything I look at, the way Chris talks about it, the way Decker talks about it, and the way Padre talks about it, I look at everything that way. And it's ruined me. I can't enjoy anything. I can't believe anything until I look at it from 5 different directions. Your thoughts, gentlemen. Let me swing back to you, Decker.
I can't disagree with the thing you just said. I think you're spot on.
Well, with that, please note that in the log, Skywatcher, that I got the official Silverback Award tonight, that I am not too far off the track.
I'm getting chest pains over that one.
I think you should. And we're going to give you CPR over the rail. All right. I want to spend some time jumping in on this because you put it in there, Jeff, when we were getting ready for this. Directed versus garbage panspermia. And I'm going to let you educate everybody what we're talking about here. And then to me, we have talked about this, never used those terms as far as I know on the show. I think it's the first time we ever used the terms on the show. I had a flashback to college biology to get things going. That's the meteorologist smacking the math major right there. That's the sound of one hand clapping, his hand hitting my face virtually right there. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. So I have a little bit of an argument with this whole concept of directed panspermia. Now, I think science is making some good progress in the direction of kind of discovering complex chemicals on space rocks and doing things that are kind of leading us up to some real scientific understanding of the possibility of panspermia. Great. But in the UFO world, we tend to talk about one type of panspermia. The favorite has traditionally been directed panspermia, right? That's this concept that there is this big program that some non-human intelligence fixed up and shipped off a bunch of DNA, and somehow some of it landed on planet Earth, and by golly, here we are. Well, I have a lot of questions about the viability of that, or why anyone would want to do it, or for God's sakes, why they would want to use our DNA. So I'm about ready to put a fork in that idea. But I think there's other ways you can get to panspermia, and my concept is kind of a little bit downstream from that in terms of simplicity, and that's just garbage panspermia. Imagine some ship 1 million years ago or 1 billion years ago coming through our solar system and doing what they're doing and doing a survey or whatever. They get done, they pack up, and what do? They toss out the trash. They toss out their medical waste. They dump the toilets and they leave. Well, there's your panspermia, right? You have all your foodstuffs, vegetable matter with DNA in it. You got all your waste food product. You've got your medical waste with their DNA in it. You got the toilets, it's got bacteria and virus, all sorts of garbage in it. That sounds like a lot easier way to get to panspermia than some fancy program someplace. Why not?
Jeff, I want to add one. Well, hold on, Chris. I want to add one more dimension to what you said, and then I'm going to turn it over to you, Chris. What about if they're here doing that, and they're done with their camping trip, they're done with their expedition, all those things are true, but they've also done some, some hunting and some mucking around and some biology and some, hey, let's try this with this, and let's bring back. We found some DNA and let's play with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then just toss all that stuff out and say bye-bye.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever they did. Oh, well, look at that animal down there. Let's tweak his DNA and throw him back down there and see what happens. All sorts of things could have happened. But the bottom line is it's just the natural state of things. We just got done doing what we're doing. We threw it all out and let's get out of here. What do you think, Chris?
Well, Jeff, I got to tell you, at first I was thinking, there's no way that I came from some alien's crapper. And here we are.
Obviously, we need to look back to other shows. Because I am pretty sure Decker almost said that directly to you or someone else.
Yeah. Did you flush the toilet near that planet? Holy crap. Oh, man.
Listen to that. Is that a pun? Holy crap. Is that what this is about now?
But then again, I see how the world is, and maybe we did come from shit.
Right?
Now, I have a hard time believing we went from in the beginning God created it, in the beginning God flushed. I just don't think that's an appropriate beginning to the Bible.
Bring it back.
Well, now, Padre, he did flush with the flood, okay? He flushed.
Yes. Yeah, we did have that.
You got to put a couple of bricks in that tank of his.
Yeah, listen, we populated this whole planet with everything from microbes to worms to salamanders to all sorts of things, not just us, right? And all of that stuff could have been just the baseline entry point from which all of us evolved, or maybe we got some of their DNA and that was good stuff, and it turned into us. So we got part of their DNA and part of a dumbass chimp's DNA or whatever. But what I'm saying is that it's much more likely that, someone threw some stuff out and some of the stuff on planet Earth came from that than it is that some fancy program was put together 1 billion years ago that seeded the universe with stuff. It's just another hypothesis. Do with it as you see fit.
So now, do you guys remember, and I try to forget it, but the Obama administration, okay? When Obama was in, very good friend of mine brought to my attention a meteorite. I believe it emanated originally from Mars. I could be wrong on that, but it landed here on Earth. And when it was being examined and they opened this thing up, it was filled with organic, slimy material. At the time, it made a big news story. All right. The Obama scientific team got in there to squash this thing. Do any of you guys recall this?
I don't.
No.
Well, I'm gonna have to go digging through my files.
Well, Mark D'Antonio's in the chat room, and yes, he remembers this, Don. It had bacteria inside it, it appeared. Now,
okay, very good. Thank you, Mark. Yes, and so where in the hell did this come from? Well, it might have been Mars. I'm not sure about that, but it definitely came from outer space. It had organic material in it. Now, that can throw the whole thing out about panspermia. Does it happen? Has it happened? I happen to think it has. Now, whether it was directed or it just happened by happenstance, I have no idea. But yeah, the stuff is out there.
Padre, you need to bring in the other flank here.
You know, I've always struggled with the whole panspermia thing, because when you look at the harsh environment that our baby planet would have been in, the radiation, the bombardment constantly from stuff falling through the atmosphere, and then we have such a diversity of life that somehow this baby little microbe that they would have planted turned into the vast complexity of life that we have now. I mean, you think about it, okay, so there's a single-celled organism. Okay, at what point does that organism decide, I want to be a plant, or I want to be an animal? I mean, what controls that decision? And then somewhere down the line say, I want to produce fruit, or I want to produce nuts. And the animal cells decide,
well,
I'm
this
going
show
to stay.
definitely is a production of nuts. There's no doubt about that tonight.
Well, yeah. But I mean, these
no,
are.
I guess notwithstanding.
You can only go up from a pile of
I'm good with that.
Obviously, the nutcracker tonight.
Yeah, I believe that we are created by an all-powerful being, God, and being a pastor, I have very strong views on that. And I think that just look at the time frame for this amount of diversity in life to have occurred in just, what are we supposed to be, 5 billion years old, something like that? No, not enough time. Not enough time. Eric Metaxas, I don't know if you've heard of him. He has a really good book called Is Atheism Dead? And he gets into some of this and the fine-tuning aspects of the planet, and makes some very good points. So I recommend that book to anyone who's interested in this line of science.
Well, one of the reasons I really like this topic, Jeff, and I was really excited you brought it up, is number one, it was obvious to me that you were going to mesh well with the lads here. I knew that was not a question. And it goes back to something from the earlier part of it, and I think Decker is going to give me a nod on this. I love the fact that we can do this kind of discussion and no one's insulted. No one is folding their arms and saying, that's it, we're not gonna talk about it.
Well, that's not always been true, Commander Cobra.
Well, we know that, but just go feel with me right now, Decker. Give me the don't pull the hook on the stage. Let me have this.
Toe missile.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm a former TV meteorologist. What do you guys even know about insults?
I don't
part of your
know.
line of work?
I think the two law enforcement people may have got a little bit more than you did. On the pullover and the flashlight in the face routine.
I don't think I'm going to be able to sleep tonight with everything we discussed. I'm telling you right now.
Well, then I know that the
we
mission's
came from a pile of shit.
Don't take it personally, Chris.
I'm not really taking it personally, but you can't go much farther up from that. I mean, well.
It does change, Chris, when we say that's crap or your crap. So I mean, look at it that way. It's good stuff. I will tell you this, and Don, this is interesting, and I'm glad that we got Jocko in here. Jocko Johnson's with us in the chat room. Been a while since I've seen him in it. It's great to see him. And of course, we got Mark D'Antonio and Jeff. I've got to get you and Mark connected up. He's got some great stuff that you're going to probably want to catch up with him. He does some absolutely fantastic work. When I was in Antarctica, I flew a scientist, and he took me to a debris field that was in the ice. And we landed, shut the helicopter down, and he started chipping in the ice, and we were pulling up these rocks that were in the ice. They weren't too far down, but it was a bit of work. And that's when he explained to me that these were meteorites from what they felt was either the moon, Mars, primarily. And they were there, and they did analysis on it to figure out where they came from. So impacts, and there's some pretty interesting, I'm not going to say alternate history, but some other stuff out there. And it goes back to what you were talking earlier, Jeff, that one of the problems I have with science is it's not science anymore. There's a conventional kind of decision that's been made, and everyone agrees that's how it is. And then at some point, we go, well, no, that's not it anymore. And somebody found it, and all of a sudden, everybody's all excited because we got this new thing, where the whole scientific method was kind of like it's been tossed out. And if you ask any questions, well, how'd you come to that conclusion? You can't ask me. I have a PhD. You don't. And that's just it. That's the conclusion. The science is settled. Oh, my God. My head explodes. There's not enough tape to keep the cobra's head together when I hear somebody say the science is settled. It's never settled. The day that it's settled,
no such thing.
We're turning off the universe. The day it's settled, that's not the way that goes. So I was really amazed by this because here I'm thinking, here we are, towards what we call classically the bottom of our planet. It could be the top, this stuff came through the atmosphere. It hit the ice. It was hot when it hit the ice. What little bit was left. And now it's frozen and it's in there. Another interesting one. Other end of the globe. I'm on the Arctic part. And I'm with this group of scientists, and they're not telling us a lot. And their gear was interesting. Mason jars and turkey basters, and we're flying around, and if we saw what we call dirty ice, if they saw areas that were this big while we're flying around 500 feet over the pure white ice pack, and they saw it, we would land. And if we found ice that had dirt, dark matter in it, they were unbelievably excited. And they'd go over, we'd shut down, and they'd get the turkey basters, and they put it in, and we put the position down. And I finally said, okay, I direct, what is going on? This is nuts. Well, they were tracking all the atomic material from detonations, from Chernobyl, other things that were going on, and they could track the characteristics by the analysis. And these little tiny molecules would get together, and in this environment, going year after year, and think about what has to happen, right? You go through 6 months of daylight, 6 months of darkness. You have ice flows that come together. They push up, they drop down. And then when it gets into the sun, this stuff is a little bit darker. It melts. The rest of it doesn't melt as much, and it gets together and it forms these little areas. And this was a really important collection they were doing because they could figure out where it came from, and they were able to figure out how it flew in the atmosphere and how it landed and it went. I love that kind of science. I loved talking with these guys. I used to also love to get people who said the earth is getting warmer, and other ones that said that was crap. And I would eat my meal, and I would start the conversation because I knew which side of the argument they were on. And it was better than the movie on the ship that night because these two scientists would be at each other's throats because of the equal status and background. Yes, Commander Cobra does have a dark side. I do enjoy watching really smart people duke it out verbally.
Well, Cobra, when you were down there in the Antarctic,
yep,
you didn't by any chance ever come across another chopper pilot by the name of McCready, did you?
That name sounds familiar. We have to talk offline.
Okay.
I think he was in a movie, wasn't he, Don? I think you're trying to set up Cobra.
No, not at all.
Yeah, he's trying to set you up, bro.
Not at all. Not at all.
You're greedy, yeah. Did you see the thing down there?
Not at all. I maybe that's where I know the name from.
Yeah, the movie, The Thing.
The Thing.
John Carpenter's The Thing.
Right. Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell, one of my favorites. So
he was the pilot on the Lubbock Lights thing.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry.
He is probably the guy that called the Phoenix Lights out as he was flying his son back from visiting his girlfriend that lived in the Phoenix area.
So we have some breaking news tonight, guys. Kind of a sad note. Dr. Jeff Meldrum passed away today. He was the professor of anatomy and anthropology at Idaho State University.
Bigfoot researcher.
Yeah, really heavily into Bigfoot research. Wrote some books on that. Age 67, passed from cancer today. So little breaking news there.
That's a shame.
So, Jeff, what is your feelings? What have you tracked on the site about a lot of these other activities that happen around UAP sightings? You have these Bigfoot activities. You have some people that talk about the paranormal. Now, of course, the rage is interdimensional beings. That seems to be the hot buzzword well, I can tell by your facial expression. That's why TV is so good, because there's no hiding. Decker, he likes to hide in the dark. He uses the shade to keep away when he's saying bad words.
I got to turn the lights down in here, don't I? Yeah.
Give me a take on all that.
I try to stick to a hypothesis on everything. I'm not the type that's going to go out there and say, I haven't had an experience, right? I can't speak from my experience that I know one of these things has happened. So I have to look at what's available. So I always say I got a hypothesis. My hypothesis about UFOs is that they exist and they're around and they've been interacting with humans for a long time. If I'm wrong, I'll change my hypothesis. Happy to do that. I don't think I'm wrong. I have one more piece of my hypothesis, and that piece is that there's a lot of other unusual stuff going on. And you know what that amounts to? It amounts to stuff that we don't understand about how the universe works. And I don't care if it's paranormal stuff. I don't care if it's a Bigfoot or another cryptid. I'm not saying it's not there. What I'm saying is that we don't understand how to explain it yet, right? I think plenty of people have seen and experienced, for example, a Bigfoot. I think people have seen other much weirder things, credible people that I have every reason to believe. So how do I explain that? I think it's just a matter of there's a lot more going on in the universe than I am personally, or maybe even all of humanity, is capable of understanding. And someday we'll figure it out, and we'll understand what the paranormal is. We'll understand why we can talk with dead people. We'll understand what a Bigfoot is. We'll understand what glowing orbs are and all that sort of stuff. The only problem is that right now, we don't understand it. So we assign it goofy names and we wander around in the forest and try to find a Bigfoot. But that doesn't mean we're not going to explain it someday. And I'm not saying that we're going to explain it away as, it's a big hairy beast in the forest. It could be any of a variety of things. The only problem is we don't know what it is. That's the only problem.
Before I turn it over to the rest of the guests, the rest of my host here, excuse me. You don't seem to be a person that rules anything out. That you want to look at everything, you want to package up what's there, maybe, editorialize where it needs to be editorialized. But you seem to be excited to just delve into this and collect it and present it and see what little bit or big bit you get out of it that moves this knowledge ball a little bit further down the line. Am I correct?
That's exactly right. I'm not afraid to be called a conspiracy theorist. I'm not afraid to tackle the topic. We just don't know what it is. That's all.
Fair enough. Chris?
Well, I kind of agree with Jeff. I mean, there's a lot of things we don't understand. We don't understand a lot of things that we consider conspiracy or supernatural, when maybe years from now it would be just something simple. And Jeff, I think you're spot on with that, and I think we have to take a deep look into it, because what I'm hearing from Congress now is they're using the word interdimensional more than extraterrestrial. That's the flavor now.
Do you think they came up with that on their own, or do you think someone gave them that word?
They read a different book than I did, I guess. I don't know.
Well, Luna has come out now twice and said, we talked about interdimensional. And that puts a whole big spin on this that we don't understand. And I think we need to keep an open mind on certain things. We have to look at the spiritual component of this, because people have said there's a spiritual component of this. And I truly believe that. And I think everybody on this show believes there's a certain spiritual component of this. I think there's an interdimensional component of what's going on. And I also think that we ourselves are part of that program where we're either trying to invoke it or study it or try to duplicate it to the point where, sometimes we have problems with it. I don't think it's going as smooth as people think.
All right, we're coming down to the last 3-4 minutes. Decker, give me a minute. I want to give Padre the close.
Okay. Most of my career, such as it was, has been devoted toward the UFO phenomenon. And that's been a long time now. But I got to say, the last several years, probably 5 or 6 years, my interest has been totally piqued with the idea of cryptids. Now, I've always been aware of the Bigfoot stories, going back to, Frank Edwards in the early 60s was talking about that. But there have been other ones. One of them is something that's been euphemistically called the dogmen, or perhaps werewolves. And there have been physical evidence collected. Not any bodies or anything, but other things, scat, hair, etc. And something else that I find even more horrifying, if it's true, an entity called creepers. And I've seen these talked about, around the web. Now, if any of those creatures are real, then where in the hell are they coming from? The only thing that makes sense to me, because, hey, we've been around for, as a species, at least 300,000 years, perhaps longer, a lot longer. But with that being said, how many times have we heard about these things? Although we do have our myths, we have our legends, and so forth. But where do these things, if they exist, come from? The only thing that makes sense to me, and Chris, I'm sorry, interdimensional crossovers, possibly. It's just where my thinking has gravitated to this point.
All right, Jeff, I'm going to thank you now. I'm going to turn it over to Padre for that close it, and maybe get the last part in there. And I want the greatest audience on the planet, please blow up UAP News Center over the next couple of days and really make an impression. It's a great site. Thank you very much for what you did. Padre?
Just to tie this night into what's been happening in our nation lately, people are questioning, and I think that's good. And I think we must, if we're to survive as a people, open our minds. You guys here on this panel have been gracious enough to allow a Bible-believing Christian to be part of the panel. We get along well, we get along with scientists, and we listen to other people. All this talk of interdimensional, really, when you break it down, how is that different from spiritual, a different dimension in that regard? We have to be willing to sit down with people with whom we disagree. We have to be able to listen. And if we don't agree with them, we have to say, that's okay. No, what you believe is not going to impact my life or me yours. It's just part of who we are as a diverse species on this planet. So in closing, I just say that as we reflect on events of this week, very unfortunate events, let's just all try to do better. Commander.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, greatest audience to planet. Commander Cobra, salute to all of you. It was a wonderful show. Thank you. I really needed it.